Hey guys, Ghazzy TV here with another Path of Exile 2 video, and this time we're going to talk about the Titan Warrior Summoner. Looks pretty badass, I'd say. Also wearing 2 Chimera pets. So we've been doing some testing, and I'm going to go through everything with this build. Our leveling experience, how to start off with the build, how to get going, and how to end up, which I just finished before this recording, clearing a tier 16 map at level 85, being in decent gear, not very high-end pushing or anything like that, but the fact that we did it at level 85 is pretty damn impressive. I will say we did not run a rare version of it. It wasn't super juiced up map. I don't think that's going to be something very few builds can handle, to be fair, in tier 16s. But it was an 82 map area, and the way you achieve that is by popping a corruption on tier 15 to make it tier 16, and then run that on a map that has irradiated and corrupted to make it area level 82, and it is the hardest you can do in the game right now. And I was able to pull that off at level 85, which is very early for that type of content, in pretty decent gear. I'm going to go through gear, skill tree, the venom draws, the experience of the campaigns and everything. So let's just crack into it and go through the details. I will first point out that in Act 1, when you start off playing a build like this, this was, no matter how comfortable this build gets when you play this later on, the part from Act 1 all the way till you get to Freythorn was without a doubt the single most excruciating experience I've ever had leveling a build in any Path of Exile game. It was the worst shit I could ever recommend anyone to do. And I will recommend you to do it because it's really good after that. You have to play melee. And I don't understand how anyone can like playing melee in this game. It's incredible how bad it is. You literally will use your default attack till the enemy is primed for a stun. Little golden shiny shit shows up above their head. You click Bone Shatter. Now they're stunned. Guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna start swinging with your default attack. It was so boring and terrible to play. However, once you're done with Freythorn, you get access to the SRS gem, also called Raging Spirits in PoE 2. And this is when you can start playing minions. You'll need a skill gem to get yourself access to Flame Wall. Let me show you how this is done. Real quick with the gems, you have, that's a support gem. So you have a skill gem, for example. You click on this elemental, you get yourself a Flame Wall. And that's how you get that one. When it comes to Spirit Gem, you'll get, again, click the Sorcerer. You get Raging Spirits. Don't forget to right-click it in your skill section for it to be activated. It costs you 30 spirits. That's how you get the SRS going. And that was the progression of Act 1. And that's when you can start playing with minions. Now, I would recommend getting yourself a Scepter. Make sure that you are getting one with plus level of minion skills. That is one of the main stats you'll be looking for across the board of all gear in general. But that would be the recommendation moving forward. After this, the build played exactly the way any other minion build in the current state of the game is played, which is basically focus on your SRS, put your sockets on the SRS first to make that 3 sockets. Use support gems like Feeding Frenzy. You want to use Fire Infusion and Martial Tempo for increased attack speed. You know the jazz. It's very simple. Just go for that approach. And once you have that, when you get more Spirit, for example, you can pick up some leveling gear. They only cost 1 Exalted right now in the current state of the game. You can pick up something like an Enfolding Dawn, which gives you a ton of Spirit. Puts a little bit of pressure on your mana because you don't get mana from your intelligence. But this is very effective. Same thing with the Oaksworn Shield. Again, this is actually a very good shield to level with. Increased block chance, but most importantly, get you some Spirit. Once you have this, you'll just focus all of your effort into your Arsonist instead of your SRS or your Raging Spirits. And you'll just use your Raging Spirits as extra damage output, and your Arsonist will do a ton of damage. So that's basically how you play in the early stage. Now, before I go any further, I will point out that you want to get yourself something like a Rattling Scepter base. This is because you get Skeletal Warrior minions. The reason this is important in the later stage, you don't have to worry about it early on, is because unlike the Infernalist class, they get a free doggo that provides ignition, which allows you to have fire exposure for free. You don't get that as a warrior. We have to solve this in another manner. The way we solve this is by having Infernal Legion on your Skeletal Warriors, which you get 2 of. But you're going to sacrifice one of them for your offering skill, which is Pain Offering. I'll talk about that in a bit. So to make your skeletons apply fire exposure, you want to run Skeletal Warriors with Infernal Legion, have fire exposure linked with them, and then once you have a high enough level Scepter, you'll add Strip Away to further scale that efficiency. These guys will die unless you get to the point where you add 1 Skeletal Cleric. As you can see in game, my Skeletal Cleric is actually keeping the zombies alive, the skeletons alive, so that I can consistently apply this debuff of enemies being exposed to fire and therefore we increase the damage of our Radiant Spirits as well as our Arsonist. So that's how that mechanic will work, that we don't struggle with as an Infernalist, but that's how we do it with a Warrior. So Arsonists are obviously extremely good. However, if you choose to not run Arsonists, since they're about to nerf them so you get fewer minions out of them, you can deal slightly less damage running Skeletal Snipers instead, but you get compensated by more Snipers. The way these are played is that they're able to shoot further than the Arsonist, and their on-demand Poison Cloud creates a Poison Cloud that grows but explodes on fire. So we can do fire damage with this by using their command ability, which is basically an on-demand explosion, which deals tremendous amounts of damage. And this is basically your burst for harder rares or bosses that compensates the damage reduction that the Arsonist brings to the table. The support gem, should you run Skeletal Snipers, I'll show how this looks if you decide to play the Sniper version instead, is to still use Scattershot for clearing purposes, then Martial Temper for speed, Heft for the maximum physical damage, as well as Fire Infusion. The sixth link would be the Immolate, since we are applying the ignitions through their SRS, or the Radiant Spirits. So they basically shoot like this. As you can see, they're shooting way further. This is an 82 area map, by the way, just like we did with the Arsonist before. And every time we have like a harder pack or a harder set of rares, we can just use the on-demand gas clouds to make sure that the damage that we're shooting is applied where we need it. So you get a little bit more player agency in terms of where you want that damage to apply. And they do a lot of damage with the explosion, but it's only when you use the ability on a flame wall to make that explosion happen. Now, I don't think it's a bad thing, and I think the clearing, unlike the Arsonist, who has a big chunk of explosions happening, which is really good, you have instead with the Skeletal Snipers an approach where you essentially shoot further away and can hit enemies in the backline, which is the clearing increase, if you will, in that sense. I think this is fine. I mean, you can choose to run both. I've talked about this before, how the Skeletal Snipers are the only minion so far that is able to compete with the efficiency of Arsonists. And now with the nerf, I don't know which one is going to be the best performer, but Snipers will definitely function and be a functional playstyle. That's for damn sure. But you will want to use Flame Wall to have those explosions happening. You still want to run the Scatter Shot for the clear with extra projectiles in general. So as you can see there, that pack right there, Arsonist would have outperformed that even with fewer minions with the patch that's coming. The gear in general that you'll be looking at, we'll start with the gear, is like I said, you want to get a Scepter with a Rattling Scepter base, and you want to focus on level of minion skills. Extra damage is always preferable, but Spirit is also very, very good. Other stats like Mana Regen is not bad, life and damage, just you go for it. But level of minion skills and then Spirit would be the two recommended main stats to focus on, a Rattling Scepter. Your helmet should have a level of increase to minion skills, and then it's just as much armor as you can muster with life, and then resistances as needed. I'm currently using a Soul Core of Takati rune in here, which you get from ultimatum encounters, or you can buy them from the store, from the currency exchange. The shield, my recommendation is to have a high energy armor, energy shield in general, or high armor shield. Again, resistance focus. I'm again using a chaos resistance rune in here, and I have increased block chance with high life. And that's about it. So that's the shield. It's very straightforward. Boots, you should never run boots without movement speed. Make sure you have a high movement speed roll. Make sure that you have runes to sort whatever rest you need. In my case, I have cold rest. Is to be life. If you can get mana, it's not bad. I'll talk about that in a bit. And then resistances, of course, as needed. Same thing with your gloves. It's just life. If you can get mana, that's great. Attributes is incredibly strong. The more attributes you can get in your gear, as long as your resistance is covered, is very good. In here, I have a Soul Core of Jaquani. That is the same thing you get from ultimatum encounters, or you can buy them. That gives me HP because I was already covered on res. Chest piece for the end game. Early game, you just get anything with life and armor and energy shield. But the recommendation here is actually to use a Sacrificial Mantle because it gives you +1 to maximum elemental resistances. Make sure you have a Spirit modifier on it. That's the only time you would change from the leveling unique. And then make sure you have a high life. Mine is not very high. It's pretty low, to be fair. But there is some intelligence, which is really good, and some half-assed resistances. But something like this would be a very good approach. I'm yet again using Chaos Resistance runes in here. Since I don't have that on the rest of my gear, I can't use life-providing ones as an example. The belt is a little special here. I would recommend trying to find a belt with high life. I managed to get some mana and resistances. But most importantly, look for one with a charm slot. That's the charm slots down here. The reason for this is that you want to make sure you don't get crowd controlled. I went for a stun charm as the first one, and then I died once because I got completely frozen. That made me immediately say, I'm just going to get a belt with +1 charm slot so that never happens again. And that solved my problem entirely. So that's how I did it. You can even get a belt with +2 charm slots, but they are pretty expensive. This one was not. Amulet is one of the bigger pieces where you can get plus level minion skills, but also spirit. So those will be the two main modifiers you can get. However, I would recommend if you want to keep the budget down that you skip the plus level minions because this build does, just like the Infernalist, a brutal amount of damage. It's just insane. So you can skip the level minions to keep the cost down, get an amulet with spirit, life, mine's pretty bad on life, and then resistances and or attributes. The ring I have here, for example, cast speed is irrelevant. It's a decent life roll. There's a good amount of strength, a good amount of resistances. So this is a decent ring. My other ring is actually really good. The mana is kind of crazy, but you don't need this much mana. I have way more than you'll need. And the cast speed is irrelevant, but I got very good strength, decent rest, and I got a good chunk of life in here. You don't need an unset ring because I actually have, with the ring, 3 skill slots completely untaken, which I'll talk about in a bit as well. Life Flask, I would recommend running something that gives you recovery applied instantly. I would also recommend having that on the mana personally, but I went for this, and the reason for this is very specific. But before we go through the skills, I'm going to talk about the passive skill tree. And before we do that, I'll mention the campaign. You get these Venom, Draughts, Poisons, whatever you want to call them, that gives you a permanent passive effect. I went for Mana Regen and then Chaos Resistance. That would be my recommendation. Attributes is easier to purchase your gear for if you buy them on the market than Chaos Res is, so that's why Chaos Res is better for you to do, and that's a recommendation. The early stage progression when you play in the game and you're leveling up is to actually cut this traveling node up here. Now, you will probably take maybe 1 or 2 strength nodes early on so you can make sure you do proper damage and have some HP. And later, once you get that SRS gem or the Radiant Spirit gem, you might have to respec with a little bit of gold to make these intelligence instead. And the first thing you want to do is get out here and go straight north, pick up the 2 minion damage nodes, pass this, don't take these, go straight up to this point to get the revive timer. Fill out this entire tree. You can skip the crystalline flesh in this node, but you want to grab the other ones because this helps your arsonist collateral splash damage. Then cut in on the right and move all the way to the right-hand side. Get these nodes to make sure you get the revive timer from Gravedigger. It will be much smoother once you get this. Once this is done, you will skip this, and you will skip this, and you'll go straight up to get the reservation. At this point, my recommendation is, because minions are not going to have problems surviving in general, now you'll focus on your blocking. That means we go all the way back here. We pick up the defensive reflexes. We pick up the unstoppable barrier. We travel on the side here. Once passing through here, you take 2 points in to get the beef. You'll then grab the vigilance from the left-hand side. And after this, you'll pick up the resistances as well as the max rest. I don't have this one right now. And then after that, you pick up the blade catcher. And at this point, you're in a really good position where you can do a very, very cool thing. That is grabbing these regeneration nodes. One of them is life regen, the rest is mana regen. And the reason for this is because we're going to be taking this node here for mana regen, but these 2 nodes. These are 6% nodes, or actually it's 5, but they're scaling, right? You get 6% of the damage that you take on your mana before your life. And because it is such a small amount, these 3 nodes here actually sustains that. It also makes it popular to oil or distill with the delirium content, the mental perseverance, to put another 10% of damage that you take from your mana before life. This gets you a 22% of damage that you take will be covered on your mana instead, which is a really cool effect, ramping up that high HP in a very easy and sustainable way without that impacting the build negatively. If you want to push currency on this build, you can grab something like this, which is a Time Lost Sapphire with increased effect of small passives. Now, I have one that gives a little bit of damage. That is actually not something you need to worry about, but the increased effect is really nice in this specific position. Even without the radius, it hits these to make the 6% a 7% instead. It also ramps up the efficiency of these nodes as well as the defensive nodes for your minions, because you're going to want to take those. Not all of them, but the first 4 on the side. So that's actually a very nice position for a Time Lost Sapphire. Regarding jewels, I have jewels like this, which is minion damage and minion attack speed in some cases. Like this one, I believe. Yes. I don't think it's needed because you do so much damage. You can go for more defensive-oriented sapphire jewels instead, but that's what I've been doing. It's been working out pretty well for me. That's the skill tree and how you're supposed to progress with it, from my experience at least. Skill gem wise, however, let's go through it. We talked about the warrior running Infernal Legion, Fire Exposure, and Strip Away. This is, in my opinion, in order of efficiency. You also are going to want to use a Blink. This is a level 14 Spirit gem that will reserve 60 spirits, and you can put Clear It if you want to. If you have enough spirits to not lose an Arsonist, then you can actually run Vitality, which in my case I should be doing, but that is an option that you can run. So I should change that later after this recording. You want to use Second Wind and then Ingenuity. The reason for this is because Second Wind allows you to have 2 blinks like this. It is incredibly strong. I know you lose damage from doing it, but this mobility is incredible. But it increases the cooldown to get charges back. It replaces your dodge roll. Ingenuity will reduce that increased cooldown to make it come back a little faster so you can do the dodge again. And then we have Clarity or Vitality if your spirit allows. If you don't, then don't run anything extra. Skeletal Cleric, you only need 1. It's just there to keep your skeleton warriors alive. I can just throw in a last gasp on it. There's really no other support gems that you give a shit about. I guess you can throw in Elemental Army. It really doesn't matter. Pain Offering, however, is your offering skill. And here you'll run a Font of Blood. This allows you to get life regeneration to your minions and yourself within radius. Helps them stay alive, but you as well. Most importantly, you'll run Font of Rage, which will generate rage for your minions to make them do more damage. And then we have a Persistence to make it last longer, because it actually costs a lot of mana, 327 mana. You can see how my mana just plummets down, but it reads up pretty fast with this build, so it's not going to be a problem. But I like using this. I know you can put another socket and have expands to make the radius bigger, which is kind of comfortable as well. Skeletal Arsonist is a little tricky because it's very likely that this will change as we move forward and the early access patches and balance things will happen because of this little support here. But in order of efficiency, you want to run Scatter Shot for the projectiles so that they splash their damage in shotgun, as it's called. And then you'll run Martial Temper for their attack speed. And then you'll add Heft because this, for some reason, adds their damage, which it shouldn't because of the new way in PoE 2 the damage conversion is working. This shouldn't work, but it is working. So as of now, you'll use this support gem. We'll also run Immolate since the Skeletal Warriors are applying Ignition. You can then run Immolate to get even more damage outputs. And lastly, we'll run Fire Infusion. Same reason there. It's just extra damage. That will be the 6th link for the Skeletal Arsonist. Raging Spirits, however, we're going to run Feeding Frenzy. They get more damage, but they take more damage, but they can't be targeted by enemies, though they can take damage from collateral splash effects or stray projectiles, so they can still die, but you don't have to worry about it since you just click the flame wall to summon them again. So you'll run a Feeding Frenzy. We'll have a Fire Penetration here, and then I don't know if this works or not. We have no idea if this works. I genuinely don't know what else you would run in here. Genuinely, I have no clue. There's no way for us to verify it, but it says it supports them, so it should work. So you'll run a Primal Armament and then fill out with Fire Mastery and Minion Mastery to ramp up the levels to get more damage out of them. Yes, you will want to level your Radiant Spirit Gem. It will increase their damage. That is a confirmed fact, but we don't know because the tooltip here doesn't show us anything because these numbers here are not accurate. That's not for them. Flammability, you should run Heightened Curse, increase effect of the curse, and I like running Ritualistic Curse for the area, but it's a matter of personal preference on the Ritualistic Curse, but definitely run Heightened Curse. And then we have the Flame Wall as the last one, which you're going to use Arcane Tempo for more cast speed, Inspiration to lower the mana cost since we are going to spam this, and then Fortress to make it a circle so that you can just place 1 on a boss, for example, and every projectile that flies through the flame wall will then get increased added fire damage, which you can see here, projectile added fire damage. This is the main reason you actually want to level the flame wall, because it will increase the damage of the projectiles flying through it, which will be for every projectile the Arsonist will shoot through, as an example. So very, very important. Again, you can throw in other things here. I would not recommend running 2 offerings for this skill because of the simple fact that we do want to have at least 1 skeleton alive for the fire exposures. Do keep that in mind. That pretty much sums up my experience with the build. Ascendancy-wise, I will cover. As you might have noticed, I have a little extra inventory slot here. This is from the Titan Ascendancy called Colossal Capacity. My recommendation, if you're not concerned about gold, is to actually do your first Ascendancy to pick up Mysterious Lineage to get more life. And then you have to respec this when you're done with the second Ascendancy, because you're going to start with Hulking Form as soon as you can, which will increase the efficiency of your small passive. It does not apply to attribute nodes, but it does apply to nodes such as the block here, or as I mentioned up here earlier, with the effect from the Manual Matter modifiers, or even the minion damage modifiers gets increased efficiency. These are supposed to be 10% nodes. They are now 15, thanks to that Ascendancy node. If you do that, the third Ascendancy becomes a life, and the 4th one later on will ramp you up with damage mitigation from physical damage through more armor from your equipped body armor. So that basically sums up the general approach to this game with this build. Like I said before, I can actually jump into the map I just did. I chose to run this one. It is also the worst map you can run because of the areas are very tight. Minions have a tendency of getting stuck. This is an Area 82 map. It wasn't very hard rolled, but as you can see, +2 to monster level. This is the map we did flawlessly clearing. Well, it's not fully. There's 2 monsters hiding somewhere on this map. But we did this very easily. The boss was a joke. I never had any risk of dying at any given time. However, if you run Alk Orb maps, for example, like rare mob maps with some scary modifiers like damage penetration or crit and stuff like that, it could be situations where you can get one shot. So to round this video up without ranting too much, I will point out that, or actually tackle the question, is this better than the Infernalist? I think that if you look, excluding the first couple of levels till you get SRS, which was the most excruciating experience I've ever had, I think that after that, it's basically the same as an Infernalist. It really is. Once you get to the point where you're in the end game, this build was so easy and so cheap to gear compared to what the Infernalist was bringing. And I think that the fair comparisons would be to compare this to a life stacking Infernalist or a Mind Over Matter Infernalist, which are both very cheap to get going and gets you to the end game. But both of those builds suffer from a very high risk of getting one shot starting at level like tier 13, tier 14 maps. I didn't feel like I had that issue at all with this character until I did tier 15, tier 16 super juiced, very hard roll maps. That's the times I got one shot. So as long as I was careful with the modifiers there, this was a cheap and effective build to run for that type of content, allowing me to actually consistently farm tier 16 content, which is the highest and hardest content you can push in the current state of the game. And that was very comfortable to do. However, I am a firm believer at the time of this recording, the current state of the game, that an energy shield focused Infernalist, maybe going Chaos Inoculation, also referred to as CI, which is a passive up here, or Keystone, that makes your life become 1, but you're immune to chaos damage, will very likely outperform this in the highest endgame content, but it also comes with a very high currency cost associated to actually scales beyond what the Titan can do. So again, I think that this build is better across the board with a lower ceiling. But if you want to push and min-max the build above that, a energy shield focused Infernalist should be your choice. I don't think most people, I think there's going to be a very small portion of the player base that wants or can do that in general. So if you're not belonging to that type of blaster player base, I think the Titan will actually be a much better choice for you to play. But that's all I have for you for this video. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more content, and I will catch you guys in the next one. And yeah, till then, stay safe.